Today we'll look at CockroachDB Cloud, but not in the way we've previously explored it. Today we'll be deploying CockroachDB Cloud to your own infrastructure, sometimes called bring your own account and sometimes called bring your own cloud. From now on, I'll call it BYOC, and it comes down to striking a balance between complexity and flexibility. With a purely self-hosted instance of CockroachDB, you gain a high amount of control and flexibility at the cost of higher deployment complexity. Whereas, on the other end of the spectrum, if you're using purely managed CockroachDB, you have a lower deployment complexity, but as a result, you have lower flexibility in the deployment. BYOC strikes a balance between the two. You get more deployment flexibility without the associated complexity. Other benefits include deeper data control for data sovereignty, deeper security, the data in your CockroachDB Cloud never leaves your own cloud, deeper compliance and auditability, you can enforce your own compliance controls, and you can harness your own existing cloud infrastructure and any discounts that you might have with your cloud provider. You might be thinking at this point, where does Cockroach Labs' responsibility end and my responsibility begin? Let's cover that off before we start creating infrastructure. Cockroach Labs are responsible for the uptime of your cluster. For multi-region clusters, that's 5 nines of availability. We're responsible for undertaking the provisioning and scaling of your clusters and applying any hardware best practices. We provide automatic miner and patch upgrades, and we automatically back up your cluster to S3 buckets in your local environment. We also ensure those backup jobs run, and we both proactively and reactively identify and resolve availability impacting incidents. What you're responsible for, on the other hand, is ensuring that CockroachDB has access to one of your accounts. You initiate major upgrades, although we perform it, and you also set maintenance windows, so we don't try to upgrade your cluster when you're not ready for it. You're responsible for sizing your cluster to match your workload requirements and configuring the backup schedule. You can also run customer managed backups from within CockroachDB yourself, but I'm just talking about the managed backups. We'll look at those in a minute. And finally, you'll want to negotiate cloud spend and discounts with your cloud service provider. Before we get going, let's take a look at the difference between a fully managed CockroachDB cloud cluster and one that harnesses BYOC. Our off-the-shelf basic standard and advanced managed service looks something like this. We run the cluster within our account, and you'll do some kind of peering to your account where your applications are running. Contrast this to BYOC, where everything runs across your accounts, and that's the primary difference. First, I'll create a role in the account that I'm creating CockroachDB. This is my own account, and this role will allow Cockroach Labs to provision infrastructure on your behalf. This is the ARN for the Cockroach Labs user. Note that I'm running in a staging environment. I'll apply that. And next, I'll provide a policy for that user, and that looks something like this. You can assume that this will look a little bit different between now and when you get your hands on it, but this describes the permissions that Cockroach Labs will have within your account. I'll apply that. And then I'll fetch the ARN for the role I just created. And I'll plug that into this request. This is a request against the Cockroach Cloud API. It's against the staging environment. Your URL will look different to mine. That's the ARN of the role I just created. All of my nodes will have 4 vCPUs and will run across 3 regions, US East 1, EU West 2, and AP Southeast 1, with 3 nodes in each. I'll fetch the cluster ID of that cluster, generate a random password, and then extract some environment variables. This will be the host and URL of the global load balancer, and if you want them, you can extract the regional hosts. With this command, I check the state of the cluster, and currently it's creating. While that's creating, let's explore the AWS side of things. I've created one role, CRL BYOC admin, and I've attached a policy to it. This policy statement is the one that I provided from the command line, and these are the clusters. I'll have 3 clusters across 3 AWS regions. This is my cluster in London, my cluster in the US. Note they all have the same UUID cluster name. And finally, the same in Singapore. Note again, the same UUID cluster name. And finally, let's take a look at the Cockroach Cloud side of things. My cluster, CRDB BYOC demo, is currently provisioning, and I'll stop the recording now, and in about 30 minutes, return. We're now about half an hour later, and our cluster is provisioned. We have 9 live nodes running across 3 regions, 3 nodes in each, with the 4 CPUs we asked for. Let's use the password we generated earlier, create a user, and log into the cluster. Running our command again, we can see that the cluster is created. And now with this command, I'll create a user called Rob with the password I generated. Finally, I'll open up the cluster to all IPs, not advisable in production, but fine for this demo, and I'll allow SQL and UI access. I'll download the certificate for the cluster and connect. If I show regions, you'll see that I have the 3 regions that I asked for at the point of creation: AP Southeast 1, EU West 2, and US West 1. Running 3 nodes in each, spread across 3 availability zones. If we head over to AWS again and refresh the page, all of our clusters are now active, and the 3 clusters across those 3 regions work together to support one CockroachDB cluster. Let's explore the cluster a bit. Because I created a user and granted UI access, I can actually open up the DB console. I'll log in with the username and password I generated earlier. And this is our cluster. As with any managed advanced cluster or self-hosted cluster, I can see if any of my nodes are down or suspect. I can see if there are any under-replicated ranges, and I can drill into each of the nodes to learn more about their health. And this is where I configure my managed cluster backups. These are the ones that CockroachDB will perform on my behalf and store in S3 buckets within my own account. From the settings menu, I can either enable or disable backups, in addition to changing the schedule of those backups and their retention periods. And if we head over to S3, we'll see what those backups actually look like. CockroachDB backups are location aware. For the AP Southeast 1 region, I'm looking at my backups in AP Southeast 1. Let's create a database just to show that this is indeed a global cluster. With this command, I'll create a new database whose primary region will be in London, but I'll make it aware of the US and Singapore regions. I'll create a regional by row product table, so I'll store different products in different locations, and I'll insert some products. 3 products for EU West 2, 3 products for US East 1, and 3 products for AP Southeast 1. And running a select for products in London, I would expect this query to return quickly because those products are physically stored in London. That's a request from my machine to my cluster and back again. If I do the same but for products in the US, they take longer to come back to me because they're physically housed in the States, whereas a customer in the States would see the same kind of performance that I'm seeing for products in London. And it's the same story for products in Singapore. They take longer to get to me because my request is having to travel further in order to get the products that are physically housed in Singapore, whereas a user in Singapore would get low read and write latencies. CockroachDB with Bring Your Own Cloud is essentially self-hosted CockroachDB with all the benefits of managed CockroachDB. If you like the flexibility of self-hosted CockroachDB, but don't want to deploy CockroachDB, or simply prefer to run CockroachDB within your own infrastructure, Bring Your Own Cloud might be a really good option for you.